Picture this: a quiet morning at Althorpe House, 1981. Candles flicker beneath ancestral portraits, and a young woman descends the grand staircase. Her posture is graceful, her presence magnetic. To the world, she was simply Lady Diana Spencer, the shy schoolteacher who captured a prince's heart. But behind the fairy tale image lay a secret older than the monarchy itself. For centuries, Britain's royal image has rested on one myth: that its power flows purely through the House of Windsor. Yet Diana's story threatens that illusion. She was not an outsider who married into royalty, but the living convergence of bloodlines that had once ruled, rebelled, and been erased from official memory. Her veins carried the legacies of kings who were denied, queens who were silenced, and children born in scandal yet never forgotten by history. What if Diana was chosen not only for her charm, but because her ancestry solved a centuries-old problem of royal legitimacy? What if the fairy tale was really a reunion of dynasties divided by politics restored through her? To uncover that truth, we must journey far beyond palace, gossip, and romantic legend. We must trace the genealogy of power itself, from the Tudors and the Plantagenets to the shadow dynasties hidden behind noble marriages. This is not the story of a wedding. It is the story of a plan that began long before Diana was born. History is a master illusionist. It hides its secrets not by erasing them, but by weaving them into stories that feel too beautiful to question. The tale of Lady Diana as the commoner who married a prince is one such illusion. Yet when we pull on the loose threads of that story, we uncover something far more complex: a web of forgotten names, disputed paternity, and royal secrets stretching back 5 centuries. The first thread leads to Henry Fitzroy, born in 1519 to Henry VIII and Elizabeth Blount. Fitzroy was not the typical hidden child of a king. He was paraded before the court, showered with honors, and even given a name that declared his origin: Fitzroy, the son of the king. His early death in 1536 ended his political potential, but his bloodline did not vanish. Through quiet marriages into the aristocracy, it survived, winding its way through the centuries until it merged with the Spencers. By the time Diana was born, the name Fitzroy had faded from history books, but the blood remained. Then came another whisper from the Tudor past Catherine Carey, officially the daughter of Mary Boleyn and her husband William Carey. Yet the timing of her birth, during Mary's affair with Henry VIII, has led historians to ask a daring question: was Catherine actually another of the king's children? Her descendants married into powerful families, spreading this unacknowledged royal legacy across England. Centuries later, that same line would appear again quietly, discreetly inside Diana's own ancestry. These aren't conspiracy theories. They are historical ambiguities that arise from the way Tudor politics managed legitimacy. Every royal affair, every forbidden child, had to be concealed, not for moral reasons, but to preserve the illusion of divine order. Kings could break vows, but they could not admit to fracturing the sanctity of the bloodline. So they built a wall of silence around the children who carried their likeness. Another mystery, older still, concerns Eleanor Butler, the woman allegedly bound to Edward IV by a secret marriage contract. That hidden union, if true, would have rendered his later marriage to Elizabeth Woodville invalid and all their children illegitimate. It was this very claim that Richard III used to seize the throne. The chaos that followed ended the Wars of the Roses and gave rise to the Tudors themselves. Through the Spencer line, Diana's ancestry reaches back to that moment, when questions of love and legitimacy decided the fate of England. Together, these stories reveal a pattern: illegitimacy as the hidden engine of monarchy. For centuries, the crown has rested not on purity, but on survival. The power of the dynasty depended on its ability to rewrite its own bloodline whenever necessary. The Spencers, knowingly or not, became custodians of that revision, absorbing forgotten heirs and weaving them into the fabric of nobility until no one could tell the difference. Diana's lineage reminds us that royal history is never black and white. It is a palimpsest, a manuscript written and rewritten by time. The closer we look, the more we see how myth was used to protect power, and how truth, buried beneath centuries of reverence, can still find its way back to the surface. Every dynasty carries ghosts, and the British monarchy is no exception. Behind its polished ceremonies and guarded smiles lies a centuries-long struggle for legitimacy, a struggle that began with betrayal, rebellion, and forbidden love. When Diana Spencer walked down the aisle at St. Paul's Cathedral in 1981, she unknowingly became the living bridge between the royal past England tried to forget and the royal present it needed to survive. The fractures began with the Plantagenets. The dynasty ended violently in 1485 when Richard III fell at Bosworth Field, closing a chapter of medieval rule. Yet not all of that blood disappeared. Through hidden unions and illegitimate branches, fragments of Plantagenet descent continued quietly in noble families. The Spencers, descended through several of these lines, carried within them the remnants of a house that had once defined the English crown. The next great rupture came with the Tudors. Henry VIII's obsession with succession tore England apart, and in his wake he left not only legitimate heirs, but a trail of unacknowledged children whose names were erased from official history. Among them were Henry Fitzroy and Catherine Carey, both connected to Diana's ancestry. Through them, the long-lost Tudor bloodline re-entered the royal sphere in the veins of a young woman born nearly 5 centuries later. Then came the Stuarts, whose reigns were marked by turmoil, exile, and scandal. James V's illegitimate son, James Stuart, the Earl of Moray, toppled his own half-sister Mary, Queen of Scots, and secured the succession of her son, James VI. Another Stuart, Charles II, filled the aristocracy with his acknowledged and unacknowledged children, including those whose descendants joined the Spencer family. By the time Diana appeared, her blood already intertwined with every great English and Scottish house that had ever worn the crown. Her marriage to Charles was, on the surface, the union of 2 young nobles. In truth, it was the convergence of dynastic opposites, the sanction line of the Windsors, and the silence lines of the Spencers. Through her, the monarchy reclaimed pieces of itself it had long discarded. When Diana gave birth to William and Harry, the fusion was complete. For the first time in half a millennium, the legitimate and illegitimate branches of royal blood converged in a single generation. The symbolism is almost mythic. William, as heir, represents the restoration of what had been fractured since the Wars of the Roses. The Plantagenet, Tudor, and Stuart streams flow again within the modern crown. And yet, the meaning of this reunion goes beyond genealogy. It speaks to the monarchy's survival instinct. Throughout history, royal families have adapted by reinventing their origins, changing names, rewriting lineage, and reshaping myth. The Spencers, through centuries of deliberate marriages, preserved the raw material that made that reinvention possible. Diana's role was not accidental. She was both heir and remedy, embodying a continuity that even the monarchy had forgotten it needed. In that sense, her story transforms from tragedy into restoration. The girl the world thought had stepped into royalty was, in truth, royalty returning home. When we look back at the life of Diana Spencer, we tend to see 2 images: the glowing bride stepping out of a carriage, and the heartbroken woman pursued through flashing lights in Paris. Yet beneath both stood something older and far more enduring, the quiet rhythm of history itself. Diana was not only a woman shaped by destiny, she was a chord in a composition that had been playing for centuries, one written in the hidden language of bloodlines and memory. The story of her ancestry is not a celebration of genetic superiority, nor a romantic fable about fate. It is a reminder that the British monarchy has always been built on reinvention. Its continuity is not in unbroken purity, but in its ability to reclaim and repurpose its past. When the House of Windsor chose Diana, knowingly or not, it was reaching back through time, restoring fragments of dynasties once thought lost, and reuniting the divided branches of England's royal heritage. The Spencers had safeguarded that heritage like archivists of forgotten power. Through their marriages, they preserved the stories that kings tried to bury, stories of mistresses, secret vows, and illegitimate heirs who still shaped the destiny of a nation. Diana's life brought those stories back into the open, not through documents or declarations, but through her very existence. Her sons William and Harry became the living proof that legitimacy and illegitimacy are not opposites, but reflections of the same historical truth. One represents the continuity of the crown, the other is conscience, both carrying in their blood the same inheritance that once tore England apart. And so, when William eventually wears the crown, it will symbolize more than succession. It will mark the return of something deeper, a reconciliation between the official history of England and the shadows it tried to forget. The monarchy will no longer rest solely on law or ceremony, but on a memory restored through Diana's legacy. In the end, her story reminds us that history is alive. It breathes through people who may not even know what they carry. Bloodlines, like music, echo long after their composers are gone. Diana did not compose the melody, she revealed it. She gave voice to the buried harmonies of England's royal past and, in doing so, became the conductor of a reconciliation 500 years in the making. Her death closed a chapter, but her blood continued the song. Through her children, and through the myth she unknowingly completed, the music of monarchy plays on no longer a solitary tune of power, but a symphony of memory, inheritance, and redemption.